Welcome back to Country Cow Designs. This is the No-Sew Crossbody. This is a crossbody take on our No-Sew tote pattern.
So we did this a few months ago and we were shocked by how people love the No-Sew tote. I was really surprised actually.
It's a really fun project and it's totally different because you don't have to sew a stitch.
Yeah, so we had so many people say, when's the crossbody coming out? So eventually I got off my bum and we put this together and actually it turned out pretty well.
It did. So this is my favourite one. There's tons of options for the closure for the flap. We're recommending a slightly thicker leather than we did for the tote because of the flap. Because when crossbody bags with flaps are empty, the flap just kind of caves in, okay? I've got cloths in this one, so that's why it's not. But they can be like, if you've got a clip on it, it can be hard to close if the bag's empty. So that's why we've recommended the thicker leather.
Yeah.
Here's an example of one that has thinner leather.
So I made these two bags out of the same leather just for a matching set. This is the final prototype, but it got too soft. So I actually attached a leather pocket to it. And to keep it shape, it's for the socks. So we're just highlighting that you do need to have a decent thickness of leather, a good quality veg tan that's probably at least 2 mil thick. Yeah,
all the instructions are in the pattern. The recommendation for the leather is in the pattern. Just follow the pattern. If you use a lighter leather, it's going to be annoying. It's going to be frustrating to close that flap. So just bear that in mind. The recommendation's there for a reason. So this is actually my favourite. We never even put a closure on it. I don't think it needs it. Okay.
So this is Halloween, which is a tannery in America. This is the Derby range. And this is an expensive
veg tan. Okay, we're going to show you some cheaper options.
Yeah, that's up there, isn't it?
This is a cheaper chrome tan. This is a good one. This one has a half moon magnetic snap instead, so that's quite handy. It's kind of quite a different look, to be honest.
Yeah. What's the name of this leather?
This is called Country Cow. Yeah, not named after us. No, we're named after it.
Yeah.
Another option.
This has a standard magnetic snap on the side of it, but obviously that would leave the prongs showing. So the pattern does include templates to cut out, which you can glue over or stitch over or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Makes it a bit more accessible.
There's like a ton of these free patterns online that you can get like SVG files for. You can just download them and cut them out.
Yeah.
So loads of options for that. And then last but not least,
this one went down quite well when we posted it on social media. This was prototype number 2 with a short flap.
This flap design isn't in the pattern.
It's not, but you could just trim down the pattern to a desired shape if you want to go different. In fact, the instructions tell you how to adjust the location of the fastener as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. We just kind of wanted to show you how much of a change you can make. Like, you can customize this so easily because all you need to do is cut the flap off, you know?
Yeah.
There's just a ton of different ways of doing this bag. So we wanted to just demonstrate that by making a few different types.
I should say one question that the comments are going to be inundated with, like it was last time. Can you make it out of vinyl?
We can't find any vinyl thick enough. That's the
I don't think so. Even double-sided vinyl. Some people glued vinyls together to make it work.
One of our testers glued vinyl together using this stuff, Intercom Eco Stick 1816B.
I do use this in the videos.
And then cut it out, which is awesome, and it was thick enough.
Yeah.
But is it going to wear over time? We don't know yet, so we can't answer that yet.
So our recommendation is, well, this is a leather pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, the concept is if you can't sew leather, but you want to use leather, this is a way to get into it.
Definitely. So we will leave links in the description for everything that you're going to need, and Adam is going to take you through this tutorial. So enjoy.
Let's get started. So to get started, just first of all cover what we're going to need in order to make this bag. So obviously you're going to need something sharp to cut the leather. So rotary blades are great for the straight edges, get a nice clean cut. For the other edges, a nice sharp craft knife. They work really well. That's a good tool to have. For the side tabs of the bag, I've got this set, which I'll put a link in the description for this. These are great. If you made the No-Sew tote, you might have already purchased this, and I've made sure that one of these actually fits the no-sew crossbody perfectly. So these are a really handy tool to have, not that expensive, and we'll use that to cut the curved sides. If, like me, you're gonna burnish the edges of the bag, then you're going to need an edge beveler. This is a size 1, so quite small, because I'm only working with 1 layer of leather. I'm also then going to burnish the edges with coconut oil, which is a really nice option for this. You could use water as well. To create the holes for the rivets, a rivet hole cutter like this is really effective, or you can use one of these, which is like a Japanese style one. These are great if you can't quite reach into the bag to place the hole. So another nice option here as well. To actually burnish the edges, I'll also be using this slicker. You could even use canvas cloth, but I like to use these. It just feels a bit nicer on my hand. So that's the tools I'll be using alongside a quilting ruler. And now we'll just look at the materials I'll be using. So here is my piece of leather. So this is veg tan. It's just over 2 mil thick, about 2.2, which is probably about 6 ounces, something like that. They don't always translate particularly well, but this is actually quite a stiff leather, stiffer than I was actually expecting from a leather of this thickness and weight. It's a Warpia Bordeaux leather. Hopefully I've said that correctly. It's an Italian leather, really, really nice, really beautiful. For the hardware, I'm going to use our brushed brass hardware. So it's just a simple crossbody kit. I've got some screw bag feet, and then I've got the rivets as well. So this should be a nice little addition to the bag, which we'll get to a bit later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place the pattern piece on the leather, and then I'm going to mark it out ready for cutting. You'll notice that I'm using my anvil to weigh down the pattern piece. That really helps to make sure it doesn't move around, because you don't want it moving. And if you can, it's quite good to print out the pattern pieces using thin card, as that makes it just a little bit more stable. I use an awl to mark out the leather, but you can use a leather pen or something similar, as long as it doesn't leave a mark afterwards, because that would be a real shame if you mark the leather. And again, make sure you mark all your rivet holes to include all those. So there we go. I've marked out the pattern onto the leather. To cut this out, I'm going to use a mixture of a rotary cutter. That's going to be great for doing the long straight lines. That's going to be really handy. I've got my craft knife, which is I've sharpened. If you're using one with a replaceable blade, make sure it's a fresh blade. You may even go for a couple of blades, making sure you get a really nice cut. And I've got my cutting tool here, which you will see matches into each section here. So I'm going to cut it all out. I'm going to cut out my base piece as well, and then I will go through and punch the rivet holes afterwards. This is probably the thickest leather I've used in a very long time, and the thickest and toughest I've used to make this no-sew crossbody. So it's probably not the best choice for doing this video, but it is lovely and it will be fine. You will notice though that in some of my cuts it is perhaps looking just a little bit, well, it's not very clean, is it? Because the toughness of the leather, maybe my blade should have been sharper. The cuts weren't quite clean as I hoping it to be. This is the great thing about using a veg tan leather, is that I can now come in, I could sand these corners smooth, which is with a high grit sandpaper. What I'm going to do though, I'm going to edge bevel all the edges of the entire bag. So that will cut away a lot of this untidiness. And then I'm going to burnish all the edges with my wooden slicker and some coconut oil. Now, I won't go into too much depth about this. I did just do a video recently about how to do this to straps, about tidying up the edges. So I'm going to do that now to this bag. That will finish all the edges and should make it look just an extra little special. And then we're moving on to assembly. So this is all ready to be assembled now. So one of the options in the pattern is to include a base panel that really adds a nice bit of structure to the base. So I'm going to do it to this one. So I've got my 4 holes marked out for the bag feet, and you see I've got my 4 holes here as well. That's handy, it makes it very easy to locate the pattern piece. If you're using prong feet, then this will have no holes in it, as a prong feet will sit underneath this panel. Of course, you've got no feet at all, then you can just locate it on the panel, and you'll see it lines up with the cuts here and here. And a nice handy tip is to use a centered ruler. So this is a ruler with a 0 in the middle and works its way out. So you can place that on your panel piece, make sure the measurements at either side are exactly the same, and then you can place that in the middle. But I've got my 4 holes, nice and easy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the screws from my bag feet to locate the panel. But as I'm doing that, I'm going to glue both sides using, for me, Eco Stick glue, which is the 1816B version. This is basically a contact adhesive, very, very good for leather. There are other glues you could use. You could even use like a Gorilla Glue or a Super Glue. Anything that works well with leather will be sufficient for this, a nice strong glue. So I'm going to apply glue to this side and that side, and then locate them together with my bag feet, and then make sure that dries nice and secure. So there is my base panel fitted on the interior with my screw fitted bag feet. So full on the brush brass hardware for this. They're all fitted in. So the next step now is to add a closure, or decide what closure you're going to use. Now you don't have to use a closure. You could just leave this completely blank with no fittings. It works absolutely fine. But for the purpose of the video, I will be fitting one. I'm going to be fitting one of these backed magnetic clasps. These actually we've just got these in stock actually, something that Joe's designed. So usually they're like a semicircle. These are square shape. So to fit these, let's turn it over. This will be fitting over the front ends over here. Now there is a problem, because this front curve is a curve. So we need to make it flat just on the very tip there, so it nestles nice and neatly inside this fastening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use again my centered ruler. I'm going to place that on the panel. I'm going to work out the center point, and I'm just going to slice off, which will be a tiny little slither of leather, and then I can fit this on with the screws. After that, we then need to fit the other side of the fastener, which would be this end of the panel, and there will be a bit of maths to work this out. Depending on what sort of fastener you use will determine where we place this side of the fastener. So I'm going to get this fitted on this end, and then we'll move to that side. Again, try and make sure it's centered, and I did use a little thin piece of leather on the back just because the thickness of the clasp was a little bit more than the thickness of the leather. So just use that just to pack it out. Now we need to fit the other side of the fastener, and this is where the maths come in. So I actually have the instructions to hand because I can't remember that, frankly. So what we first need to do is measure, just flip this over, need to measure the edge of the flap to the center of the magnetic clasp here. So in this case, using this measurement, I can see that this to the edge of the leather flap is 1/2 inch. Nice and simple. So then what we need to do is deduct that measurement from 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters. So 5.5 inches less 1/2 inch gives me 5 inches. So if I now flip this back over, I need to measure 5 inches down from the top here, down the panel. Again, making sure it's centered. So the center point for me, 5 inches down, will be where I locate the other side of the magnetic fastening. So there we go. I've put a little bit of leather on the back here. That's just glued using the same glue as here. Actually, to get a nice round shape, I actually use the same tools that I use to cut these shapes. I just do it twice back to back. Gives you a circular shape to use there. So that's all done now. The clasps are fitted, which is great. And now we get to, I think it's probably the funnest part of the project, although it can sometimes be a bit tricky. And that's actually assembling the bag, closing it up using the rivets. So to get started on this part, what I'm going to do is start from the bottom and work our way mostly to the top, and I'm going to do one side at a time. Now, some people I know like actually do both sides at the same time, working up the bag. Personally, I prefer it this way, but whatever floats your boat. So first thing you need to do, these are the flaps. You need to bring this flap in. Now again, depending on the stiffness of your leather, this might resist you. So I'm just going to push it into place. And then we bring up two sides of the bag. And as it closes up, you'll see that it should snugly come together. Now it is a tight fit. If it wasn't a tight fit, the bag would be really floppy. And the hardest ones you're going to find are the ones down here. So what I like to do, I like to start with this side here first. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a medium rivet, put it through there, and then I'm going to put it through the hole here. I'm going to get a cap, and I'm just going to pop it on. So I'm not setting it yet, I'm just placing the cap and the rivet together inside the bag. And this is where making the holes in these flaps slightly bigger at 3mm will give you just a little bit of play and make this job a whole lot easier. Now I'm going to grab a longer rivet because I'm actually going to have 3 layers of leather at this part. And this is where it gets a bit tricky. You need to get the rivets through these holes all line up together. You might find it resists you. It is tight, but it needs to be. So giving it a little squeeze on the corner there. So just squeezing it in, pushing it in place is going to help you locate those holes. Now, it can be a bit tricky. Amazingly, mine actually just popped right through there, so I'm well chuffed with that. So you'll see here that I've got my 2 rivets, they've gone through. I'm going to put a cap on the back of this one before it pops out. I'm just going to push that on. There we go. So that's just loosely held in place. And now what I'm going to try and do is just come down and just make sure this is looking nice and flat just across here. So you want this to be nice and flat, and ultimately all these rivet tabs, these bits overlapping should all lay flat once the bag is complete. Now, as you can see here, I obviously didn't cut my pattern piece exactly square because I've got a slight offset here. I'm not too fussed about that, but ideally these bits here should line up nice and tight as well as it's shown in the pattern instructions. So they're in place, which is good. So now I'm going to rivet them using the rivet press. So I'm going to bring that around. And this is why we start at the bottom and work our way out, because we actually have to open the bag down the side to get the rivet press in. Now, if you're setting these all by hand, you could fit all the rivets loosely, set them all by hand and be done with it. And that may be easier, depending on how you feel, but I'm going to use the rivet press, and you'll see that we can open it up almost like a set of teeth, of zips, sorry. And it will open up and we can fold it around the base of the rivet press, send it in, and now we can get our rivets set. Again, I'm paying the price for using a very stiff leather for this one, but it will be doable. All right, let's pull these out. Right, let's bring it back. So they have now been set. Yep, that's all good. Now it might look a bit like it's coming out of shape here, but as you close up the bag with the rivets, the whole bag will be pulled nice and tight as you work your way up the bag, and you'll get a nice, neat finish. So I'm just going to do one more for you to see. See, I'm going to put that through here. Pop that through the hole on the other side. And on the inside, I'm just going to place the cap on the rivet just to hold it in place. So now I'm going to again wrap it around the rivet press. Make sure it is located on the press correctly. You see we have an overlapping join as we work up the side of the bag. So I'm going to plow on now. I'm going to get all these fitted, but what I will be doing though is I won't be fitting these top ones. I'll just come up here and I'll do the same on the other side, and then we'll leave this for when we attach the D-rings. Right, so there we go. You'll see that I've fitted all the rivets, but not including the top ones yet. And it's looking pretty good. Now this leather by far is the stiffest I've used to make one of these. I probably should have thought ahead before trying to do it on video, but it does mean that it's going to age beautifully. It is gorgeous leather, this. Just a bit tough on their hands. Of course, if you're a bit concerned about using the rivet press, as I said, set them by hand or use screw rivets, something like that. You'll probably find it easier, especially maybe for your first attempt. And the reason why we left these top ones unfastened is because we now need to fit the D-rings. So I'm using 3/4 inch D-rings. These are quite petite ones. This piece here is 3/4 inch, and that's why it's quite nice. It's a nice subtle small D-ring for your bag. So what we need to do, we need to fold this tab in half and slip this over it. Right, there we go. So it's a bit fiddly. You might have to sort of roll this part up to fit it through. But this is leather. You can maneuver it and mold it in place. And you'll see that we now have a nice tight small D-ring at the top. And the flap has been folded over, and that's how we hold it in place. Now what you can do is you can use a little bit of glue here and here to fasten this down. It's not absolutely essential, but for me, I think it would just help the leather just to wear a little bit better, get a slightly nicer finish. So I'm just going to apply some contact adhesive to this side, fold it over, and then I'm going to fit the rivets. I've got my glue on there, and it's just gone a bit, yeah, it's gone tacky, which means I can now bond it together. So just make sure I locate it correctly. I'll put the rivets through the top here. Now, this is where it's worth mentioning that, again, we've got 3 layers of leather. So again, I'm going to use a slightly longer rivet on this one and a shorter one. Again, this will depend on what material you're using. So I'm just going to pass it through there. Pass that one through there. And now what I can do is I can fold this over and make sure that I'm getting the rivets located correctly before I push down and actually bond it together with the leather. There we go. See the rivets have popped through there. 1 cap, 2 cap. Again, let's set these with the rivet press. That's all set. I'm going to do exactly the same on this side, and then I'm just going to make a quick, simple strap using webbing, really standard, with standard hardware, and that will be the bag done, and we'll do the final reveal. So there we go. It turned out pretty good actually. I'm quite happy with it. As I said in the video, this leather was pretty stiff, but it shows what can be achieved. It also means this is going to age really nicely, so a bit worth the effort. Simple webbing strap, which is nice and easy. Of course, you could take it a bit, make it a bit fancier, make a leather strap that would look really good. I made this for Joe recently, which is a webbing strap with some leather accents. This turned out pretty well actually, and a lot of people seem to like this. So I think we're going to do something with this. Check out the blog post on our website to see what we've got planned. But I might upgrade this bag with a strap like this a bit later on. If leather's not your thing, don't worry. In a few weeks' time actually, Joe's next pattern is soon to be released, which will be the Yasmoto handbag. So that's almost ready to go actually. You won't have to wait long for that one. Thanks so much for joining us for this video. I hope you really enjoy making this bag. Stay tuned for more projects in the coming weeks and months, and thanks for watching.